So to finish out the book, we're in the second hour. Um, Alita starts out the book by telling you how she helped get Stone Cold Steve Austin over. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the tutelar hero. He was every working man's guy. And I noticed that every decade, there's always that one superstar that stands out for that working man um, particular reason. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the guy for the Attitude Era, and CM Punk is the guy for the PG and the New Era. He is every working man's guy because he's relatable. He's somebody who speaks his mind unapologetically. He's somebody that somebody wants to be. And he and Stone Cold embody those similar characteristics. They're rebels, but they are very much two sides of the same coin. Stone Cold more is a beer guzzling country boy, you know, and then you've got CM Punk, who's more of a right fighter in his particular approach of being relatable. And he just is it's the bravado of both men and how they both embody the rebellion. Their rebelliousness is completely different, but it makes perfect sense for them. And as an audience member, you can relate and understand. For us in the Attitude Era days, Stone Cold Steve Austin was everything we wanted to be to our bosses, especially if you were a working man, like a contractor, plumber, electrician, HVAC specialist. Those guys have to deal with asshole contractors, asshole bosses, and supervisors all day, every day. So to see a guy like Stone Cold Steve Austin looks like a hardworking guy come in and he's like giving his boss every bit of animosity and anger and frustration that we all wish we could give to our bosses. It was very refreshing and different. So he was being cheered mercilessly no matter what he did. When it comes to CM Punk, however, CM Punk is the kind of guy who tells you how to be cool without the beer. So you can be cool, you can be, very chill, you can be sought after for your intelligence, for your wit, for your ability to command the audience, your charisma, your charm, and your very, very quick quips. CM Punk is one of those guys, but he also reminds you of an everyday dude. He's not somebody who's overly, pump like super super huge, chiseled, or an overly attractive man like what they used to pick back in the day. And he's got a normal looking guy, normal. He's not 100% amazing, ecstatic, great in the ring. He's pretty average as a wrestler. And what set him apart was his personality and his ability to be able to talk on the microphone and charm his way through the WWE and as well as other promotions like TNA and Ring of Honor. CM Punk just had a way. And when he was a villain, he was a villain. He's the kind of guy that you love to hate and you love to cheer for. And that's why he and Stone Cold are two sides of the same coin, in my opinion. However, Stone Cold Steve Austin couldn't get over. It didn't matter what that man did, he was cheered, revered, and loved. And because of that, they had to come up with a plan to get Stone Cold Steve Austin to be a heel. He had been a face forever. And The Rock had left so that he could go and film The Scorpion King, which is his very first feature film, if I recall. The first time he was in a movie was The Mummy Returns, but The Scorpion King was centered around The Rock's character. And because of that, he was going to be gone for quite some time. Filming a movie sometimes can take up to a year, maybe a year and a half. And with him being the lead character, he had to take quite a bit of time off in order for it to work for him. But The Rock was gone, and they needed Stone Cold to be a heel so a new face could rise and start to take over. So And Stone Cold was ready to be a heel. He wanted to do something different. And wrestlers get stagnant. They often can become, you know, stifled in their in their respective characters. They can feel stuck creatively. They can feel like they're in a pigeonhole, and that is a very real thing. So, as a wrestler, you want to change so you can keep things fresh, and you're gonna pivot. And Stone Cold Steve Austin needed to pivot, but the fans were so ravenous when it came to him, and the fans loved him so much that any pivot that he tried to do on his own, no matter what man he attacked, it never worked. So they came up with a new plan. The new plan was for Stone Cold Steve Austin to take out a woman. Take a guess at who that woman was going to be. They went to Lita and Team Extreme, and they made sure to tell them that you guys were going to be put into a program with Stone Cold Steve Austin, Triple H, and Stephanie at this point. But your main concern was going to be Stone Cold Steve Austin from here on out, depending on how well it was done. Your job is to help him get over as a heel. It's not working on his own, and we need somebody that the crowd loves unapologetically, and you, Lita, are that girl. Do you think you can do this? She was ecstatic and immediately accepted. They came up with a plan as to how they were going to get Stone Cold Steve Austin over, and it worked. Essentially, what happened was this was the main event, and it was a it was a it was a 6-man mixed tag team match. Well, I don't think it was a tag team match. When Lita describes it, they came down there. Um, Lita was wrestling with Hunter and Matt and Stephanie, and Stone Cold interfered in that. And when Lita got the pin, once she hit the twisted fate, this caused an immediate reaction from Stone Cold and Triple H. What they did was they took Lita, they took Matt. They beat up Lita. They definitely beat her up. Hunter beat her up, hit her in the back after she lost the match. I mean, won the match. Um, and you had Matt and Jeff both got hit in the head with chairs. Jeff was being repeatedly beat down. And then once Triple H kind of like stopped the heinous act, that's when Lita crawled over Matt and laid on top of him. And then she kind of looked at Stone Cold and was just like, please don't do this. Like, you wouldn't hit a woman. That's that's the kind of look that she kind of gave him. So um he ends up hitting Lita repeatedly with this chair. It was brutal. And then they get up and Triple H picks her up, holds her up, and he hits her with the stunner. And that was how they got the crowd to boo Stone Cold Steve Austin. They went in the back, and everybody was very ecstatic about this. They were happy. Vince McMahon was very proud. He basically was like, thank you. You guys did your job very well. I appreciate this more than you know. And this began a program with Lita and Stone Cold Steve Austin, Matt Hardy, and his wife at the time, Deborah. They began to, constantly have a back and forth. And it was a good program for the two women as well as for the two men. Around this time was when WWE and A and WCW had, basically become one conglomerate. They didn't really have a plan as to how they were going to implement this. So what they did was they, instead of doing it the way that they had announced they were going to do it, which was let's have two separate companies, let everybody do what they're doing, and we float between the three companies. They went with this invasion angle, and this made everybody in WWE a pseudo face, and then everybody in a WCW a big heel, which was leaving a lot of people out of the stories because nobody would care if it was the guy that was down on the totem pole. All they cared about was the Stone Cold Steve Austins and the Stings and those guys. That's all they cared about. Granted, I know Sting didn't come at that point. I'm just, I'm just giving you guys an idea of what I'm saying. So, anyways, um, so the situation made the things very difficult, and it made the locker room very tumultuous for a lot of people because they felt left out. They felt like they were not included in the conversation, and even Team Extreme was starting to feel like there was not enough going on in creative for them. And they began to tease their breakup. It was right around the time that the Hardys and the Dudleys were going at it. And they had Stacy Keebler on their side to even the odds, and so Team Extreme could continue going. Um, but it started to snowball, and they had drug it out for so long that Team Extreme was just like, man, just hurry up and do this. Like, let's just get this breakup going, and then we can figure out what we're gonna do on our own. Another issue that was coming up was Jeff Hardy at the time. Jeff seemed to be phoning in his his work. He was no longer interested in competing or, creating stories anymore. He was starting to lose his love of wrestling. And well, it made it very difficult for his brother and for Lita to be able to work with him because he wouldn't pay attention. Sometimes he wouldn't show up for work at all. And it just was a difficult time for Matt Hardy and Team Extreme as a whole. And so, as a wrestling fan and as a competitor, when you hear that, it sounded to me like it was a cry for help. Um, I would have immediately told him to just, see if you could take a break. And I know that during this time, that was very, very difficult because Vince McMahon didn't want to hear a break. A break from what? Life? For him, WWE was life. And it just sounded like to me that Matt Hardy was having some mental health issues and nobody was focusing on his mental health. They were only concerned about the bottom line. And nowadays, that's a different story. And some people just don't have the mental strength to continue going when they're burnt out. When you burn out, you are going to phone in everything, especially when you lose your passion and your love for something. It can cause you to become very lackadaisical, nonchalant towards your career, something you've worked for your entire life. It can ruin everything for you. And to keep yourself from having to go through those trials and tribulations, I would say that you most definitely would need to work with a therapist and keep yourself grounded. Find people around you that are like minded and also keep themselves grounded so you can have the tools to work through these types of bouts of depression. Um, because that's what it sounded like to me. And I'm not trying to diagnose anybody, but it sounds like he was depressed and nobody really understood what was happening with him. And I imagine that would have happened with a lot of people. But Jeff Hardy had a lot of troubles that he self medicated. And in this particular case, it's very, very sad. However, they did tease an angle of the brothers facing off against each other. Matt seemed to be the heel in this situation. He accidentally punched Lita in the face in a match she had with Stacy Keebler. The Dudley boys exacerbated that in their next match. And then the boys ended up arguing with each other because Jeff had more care about what happened with Lita than Matt did. And Matt was just like, it was an accident. I wasn't trying to hurt you. Like, what are you, like, y'all are doing too much. And so this began the fight between the two boys, and it ultimately led to a match between the two of them, which Matt got really sick during that match. I mean, before that match, and he was trying to get Jeff to, focus and zero in. Jeff didn't really care. He did what he wanted to do. He showed up however he wanted to. He didn't really focus on the match itself. So it was a bit of a tough match, and that match had a special guest referee, which was Lita. She says that they didn't give her any training as a ref, which makes a lot of sense because you want it to look as organic as possible, especially if they have to side with a particular person or they have to cause some chaos. They don't need to have any formal training. Just go out there and mimic what you see the rest do. Go out there and count one, two, three, and bring your ass out from out there. You know what I'm saying? On whatever other spot you're supposed to do. So I was like, yeah, I was like, this makes perfect sense to me. And I'm like, that about all the other times that referees were used, and they used superstars for referees. And I was like, huh, that sounds very, very familiar. And that makes a lot of sense to me. But, anyways, so Lita's job was to simply see the match, and let the boys fight it out. And then she was supposed to count one, two, three. That was her job. They went through with the angle of breaking up the brothers, and nothing happened. The crowd didn't react the way that they wanted them to. And Vince was kind of at a loss as to what to do with Team Extreme. So he suggested that they take some time off and then they can regroup. Once they get some other storylines out the way, they can bring Team Extreme back and possibly run with a different angle with them. Of course, Matt and Lita were not happy about that because having time off in WWE was not common, and it usually can mean life or death in terms of you as a wrestler and a character in WWE. If you are not someone of prominence like Triple H, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Undertaker, Kane, people who are undeniably irreplaceable, then you would get lost in the sauce and ultimately could end up on the chopping block when they started doing cuts. So I can understand why Matt and Lita were upset, but they weren't really upset about that possibly getting cut. They were more upset at the fact that they were ready to go. They were really ready to push through and do this. They had the drive, and Jeff was fine with it. He was like, yeah, let's fucking take a break. I'm tired. I don't want to do this shit no more. That's just how Jeff felt, which I could totally understand. Again, when you burn out and you're working, like that it can be rough on you mentally. It can be so hard to deal with. So Matt ended up staying and they ended up having, like, when you have downtime, there are appearances and things that they want you to do, game shows, TV shows, late night shows. They might ask you to do commercials. They might ask you to do some of their promotional work for their pay per views, their third party deals, whatever the case may be. So Lita was asked to be a part of Dark Angel. And Dark Angel was a TV show about a woman who had been genetically altered, and Lita was set to be the villain on the show that Dark Angel was going to be fighting against. I believe Elijah Deuce Crew was in that TV show, if I recall. Now, I'm not quite sure because I watched Dark Angel rare sparingly. I didn't know James Cameron had directed Dark Angel. That's fucking crazy. But um yeah, I did watch Dark Angel. I did enjoy Dark Angel somewhat, but I didn't watch it as much as I was watching like stuff like Buffy and because I was a teenager. Okay. I was a teen at the time. Anyways, so she got invited to the set to play one of the villains on the show, if not the big villain. Now, she ends up getting injured on this set. And what's interesting is how she describes the set. She gets there, the stunt coordinator is working out the final big battle between her and the Dark Angel. Max is her name. So their stunt coordinator and her are working out how she can incorporate some of her wrestling moves into this show. And the Hurricane Rana is something that Lita is known for. She's also known for her moonsault. And she said that in this particular spot, the stunt coordinator and her husband were supposed to be working with her to set up their fight. And when they got to her doing the court, her Karana, she explained to her how it needed to be done and how she had to twist her body and, move so that this flip would look right on her, as well as the her Karana being executed properly. So, girl, it did not come out correctly. Let me just make that very clear. It did not come out correctly. The lady did not twist like she was supposed to. It caused her body to buckle underneath her, which left Lita hitting the crash mat very, very hard. She couldn't move or get up, and only thing she could do was swing her legs off the edge of the crash mat. Somebody helped her up, but they didn't have any on-set doctors, which really concerned me. I was like, what the hell do you mean there were no on-set doctors? Lita said there were no on-set doctors. No one thought to check on her to make sure she was okay. They kind of moved under the guise of, well, she's fine. She's a wrestler. She's fine. And it just was very, very scary to hear that happened. Like she could have literally been paralyzed on set and they would have been liable because they didn't have any medical on in vicinity. And that is just so strange. But it is in 2000s and it's Hollywood. Now, she said she was used to WWE having doctors, and if something went wrong, people were always there to check on you, make sure you were okay. It was very much a camaraderie when people got injured, and they focused on making sure you were safe. Safety was the first thing. So, going into this environment and working and then getting injured, and no one having a care in the world about your injury really was very jarring for her. She didn't understand why they didn't have a doctor on set, and but they did it. And she was very, very upset by that. So she tried to get them to, hey, like I need a doctor. We need to go talk to a doctor. And they're like, oh, well, we usually they don't really do anything. They just give you some pills and pretty much um they give you some pills and they pretty much just take you out to a massage therapist or a chiropractor, and then that's it. You get back on set, you do your job. And she was like, look, I really need to go to a doctor. I don't think I can do what I need to do without going to a doctor. And so the guy on set, the showrunner, I guess, was just like, hey, listen, you need a doctor. I'm pretty sure you can contact your concierge at the hotel. They can help you get a doctor if that's what you need, but we don't have a doctor on set. That was the end of that. So she ends up going home, well, going to her hotel. Her mom was there. Luckily, her mom was there. She goes to the hotel. She's chilling. She takes a bath. She could barely take off her shirt, barely take off her clothes. She gets into the tub. She's laying in the tub for what feels like forever. She says she did it for about an hour, laying in the warm water. And that helped to loosen her up. But she said she doesn't really know how to describe how she felt. She said she knew she was hurt, but she can't tell you the extent of the injury. All she knows is that she didn't feel right. And so she was like, I was in a tub and just not feeling 100%. And she basically made sure to explain somewhat how she felt, but there was no clear, definitive answer if she was like, in dire need of medical attention. But she knew the extent of the injury was serious enough that she needed to see a doctor because she didn't feel right. She didn't let her mom know how hurt she really was, mainly because she didn't want her to panic and she didn't want to lose this gig. She wanted to keep the gig and everything. So she went on ahead and she got up afterwards, got dressed, and went to the rap party. She didn't think she was going to go at first, but she ultimately ended up going because she didn't want to be the odd man out. And eventually, she gets up, gets dressed, and she goes and takes her mom. Her mom was very excited to be there because she knew who James Cameron was. Lita had no idea what Dark Angel was, what James Cameron, who he was. She didn't know nothing. Okay. And if you don't know who James Cameron is, He is a very, very famous director. He directed the Terminator films, and his biggest claim to fame at that time was the highly successful Titanic film. Nowadays, he's directed the Avatar series, and that is what he's probably more famous for among most people in in the world who would say, "Ooh, I who is James Cameron?" The first thing they probably would say is Avatar because it's the most popular thing he's done since Titanic. Okay. So this was a big deal for her mom. Her mom loved James Cameron, and James Cameron recognized her from her home movies. He knew who she was. So she had a really cool moment with James Cameron, which I thought was very sweet. So long story short, she finished the shoot. She did not go to the doctor the whole time that she was there, which not quite sure as to why she didn't. She was in pain. The pain was getting worse. When she got done with the wrap party and went back to the hotel and then ended up getting up the next day to go shoot, she said that her arm was completely numb. Two of her fingers were black and blue. Her neck was killing her. And she couldn't really, lift her hands or move her back properly. I would have immediately requested help. But she was under this mentality of being a wrestler. You don't need, to ask for help. If you can move, you can talk, you can do all these things, then you're fine. Just keep pushing. But there was also provisions in place in the WWE that were very, very protective of the superstars. Whereas on set, they acted as if you move, then you're fine. But they ignored the fact that she was injured. And then come to find out there was a medic on set. They just didn't call the medic when she got injured. And this was all due to the stunt coordinator and his wife. Well, the stunt coordinator and the wife and the husband who were working on the show. They were very reckless and careless with her. And I think it had a lot to do with her being a wrestler and not necessarily them, it's more like they didn't respect her profession. And they're just like, you're a wrestler, like get your ass up. It's not that big of a deal. And this lady broke her neck in three places. She had a ruptured disc. Okay. She was moving and working for 3 days with a broken freaking neck on some Kurt Angle shit, a ruptured disc, a numb arm, and black and blue fingers. She was more concerned with everyone essentially being concerned about her than she was actually being concerned about herself. I don't understand that logic because if it was me and you dropped me on my neck and my neck is hurting, and then I turn to get up and I can't move, we have a problem. I'm not going anywhere until I get help. She saw James Cameron at the party, never said a word to him about her being in pain. But again, she felt like if nobody else cared, then she's fine. And I'm just like, that sounds very, very strange to me. That behavior is very pleaserish, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all because I can tell you right now, I would have been raising holy hell if I could not get up and move on my own. This girl ended up going to set, stood there. They had her do a couple of her scenes, and then they didn't say anything to her. She had no knowledge of where she was going or what she was doing next. Then all of a sudden, they come to her and they say, "Oh, well, we need your shoes for your stunt double." She gives the bitch the shoes. Then they leave her standing outside in a tank top, no coat, no shoes, no nothing, no conversation. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you serious right now? I would be letting motherfuckers have it. You hear me? Have it. She didn't want to make a ruckus, but she got to the point where she was angry and she was upset, and she ended up going in where James Cameron was and just loudly proclaiming, like, It's freezing. I don't have on my shoes. I don't have my shoes. What is going on? Can I get some help here? I'm hurt. I need help. That's when everybody rushes to her. They get her a coat, they get her shoes, they sit her down, they give her something to drink. They pretty much pacify her. And then the medic comes over and tries to take care of her. And that's when she realizes that she's really, really injured. She finished everything she was supposed to finish for that day. They had to stop person do majority of the other work, and James Cameron just kind of gave her a big round of applause for working through the pain and the injury, and everybody congratulated her. And she was just like, I don't give a shit about any of that. I just want to leave. Which, in all fairness, I don't fucking blame her. So she gets up, she gets her shit, goes to the hotel, she bounces. All she wanted to do was like go see Matt and go to the doctor. Her mom was unaware of any of the things that was happening to her. She ends up going to see Matt. Matt rushes to her. She tells Matt what happens, and he's obviously very concerned. She was supposed to go, fly home, but she decided to go see Matt. Matt was at a house show, so they ended up going. She flew to where he was on the house show. She said, when she got there, first people that saw her were Deborah and Steve, and they noticed immediately that something was wrong. Deborah was just asking her, like, how was your shoot? How did everything go? And at first she was just like, it was okay, da da da. And then Steve was like, wait a minute, are you all right? Are you okay? And she tells him like what happened, and he said, "Well, that's a load of horse shit." They were very concerned about her. She was just glad to be back home where her family was, because that's how she presents them to the world in this book. Is they operate like a family, and there was a sense of camaraderie, even though there was a competitive nature to the old school locker room, and there was some misogyny and shit going on back there, but there was a sense of care for these wrestlers and them as people backstage. It's not all, evil is villainous Vince McMahon. And she makes it very clear how Vince came to her. And given the state of how Vince McMahon behaves, it's very clear that that man has a type. And Lita obviously was not his type, at least for now. What we know is that he wasn't her type. I don't know what he's done behind the scenes, and she hasn't said anything. So I'm not alluding to anything. I'm just saying the way she describes his interaction with her is very, very different from what I've heard from other wrestlers, or other people who have been around Vince and other people who have described him to them. They describe him very differently. He comes across very matter of fact, but also very caring towards them, and from Lita's perspective. I've heard Trish describe him in this manner as well as various other superstars who've always said, like, he is very good at listening and he doesn't really turn you away. If you have a cool idea, he'll run with it, which makes a lot of sense to me. But then I guess even the devil had their favorites. And that's where I'm going to leave that. She ends up going to the doctor after this. She did go out to the ring with Matt. She said she was in severe pain, but she pushed through and she went. She went out to the ring. She, had kept her hand in her belt loop to keep her arm, keep everything stable so she didn't look like she was in too much pain or too hurt. She ended up leaving, going to the doctor, and the doctor tells her that she broke her neck in three places. The doctor also explains that she had a ruptured disc, and she ended up having to talk to the neurosurgeon, which means that she was more than likely going to have surgery to repair and just, set those broken fractures in her neck, which is very, very scary. It's a scary situation here. Now, when she went to the doctor, when they flew to the doctor's office and they got there, the doctor's bedside manner was non existent. He was very matter of fact, he was rude, and he didn't really understand how to talk to her without scaring daylights out of her. He explained that her neck was broken and it was crucial that she have this surgery to repair it. Otherwise, she risked the fact of never wrestling again and possibly becoming paralyzed. This scared the daylights out of Lita, so much so that she really didn't want to hear what he had to say. She almost was in a state of non belief. She was just like, "Are you sure? Because, like, I'm walking around, I'm fine. I'm not like in the best of health in terms of my pain, but I'm better than what you're saying I should be. So, are you like sure?" And he's just like, "You need to have this surgery immediately. 4 o'clock is the earliest I can get you in." And this man was not wanting to let her leave the hospital. She tried to go to the bathroom originally, and he was just like, "No, you need to sit down because we need to talk about this." And I'm just like, why couldn't she like pee? Like, if you really wanted to be safe and keep her safe, like, why not, have a nurse take her to the bathroom because you're concerned that just the slightest jar could cause her great pain or she could be, injured? Like, why didn't you just tell her that instead of acting like a complete and total jerk? So this led to some issues with Lita and his doctor. She didn't want to work with him or let him complete the surgery on her. So she ended up saying, "Hey, I want to get a second opinion. I want to go to Dr. Youngblood. He's a WWE's neurosurgeon. I think that that's a better place for me to start." Um, he was like, "He's going to tell you the same thing I'm telling you. Like, that's not going to be any different." Like, just he was very matter of fact going off. And so she ended up stepping out and calling Stone Cold Steve Austin because he also had to have neck surgery. Dr. Youngblood was the one to perform the surgery. She wanted to get an opinion from him. It's very clear that she holds Stone Cold in very high regard, and she regarded him like a dad, like he was like an uncle, like a really cool uncle to her, is the way he operated. And he essentially was like, let me talk to the doctor. So he talks to the doc. The doc doesn't know who he is, doesn't care, thinks that he's a parent or something. She tells him it's Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he just looks like, okay. So he gets the phone. The doctor tells her same thing that he told her. He tells Stone Cold. He says, give the phone back to her. Stone Cold is like, listen, you have already been walking around, you've been carrying your own bags, you've been doing your own thing without you having to have this surgery just yet. I don't think going on a plane or talking to the doctor is going to cause you any more pain and suffering than you have right now. He said it won't hurt you to go get the second opinion. Fly to San Antonio, fly to I think it was San Antonio. I'm not sure, but he said fly to the doc and come see if we and if you need the tickets that we have, we'll give you our tickets and we'll catch a later flight. But if you can go to the doctor now on your own flight, we'll meet you there and we'll all go to the doctor together, and that I hope that'll help. So they ended up being able to catch a flight to go see the doc, the WWE's neurosurgeon. And Stone Cold did tell her, like, he's not going to bullshit you. He's going to tell you the truth. He knows what we do. So he has a better understanding and rapport of how this is going to play out for you and whether or not you can get back into that ring. So he explained to Lita the idea of what had to happen in terms of him having to um, perform the surgery. The first doctor wanted to put pins and rods in her neck, in the front and in the back and on the side, to stabilize the neck. And they were gonna, do all this rigmarole. And she just wasn't feeling any of that. She wasn't a fan. So when she talked to the WWE's neurosurgeon, he was going to put a metal plate in the front. And then he was going to take a bone from her hip, stabilize her disc in her neck, and that was going to allow her to heal and still be able to wrestle later on. She was ecstatic because the surgery didn't come across as invasive as the other doctor's surgery. And he did tell her it's going to take you a longer time to heal, but you'll be 100% when I'm done, and you'll be able to go back in and start wrestling in about 3 to 4 months, I believe, at the time frame that she was set to be off. Any whoosies. She ended up saying okay and agreed to the surgery, had the surgery. It was successful for the most part. And he ended up Matt Hardy was with her the whole time. She went through the surgery. It took about 3 hours. They said it was successful. They filmed her surgery, and this was all a part of her package, when she comes back. But they showed her surgery on TV. She got to see the raw footage of these big screws and being screwed into the back of her neck, and she just was freaking out that that's what was in her neck at the time. Scotty Too Hottie ended up having this have to have a similar surgery right after Lita's surgery that next week. So he called to check and see how Lita was feeling and how she was doing. And Lita was a trooper. She basically was like, I'm great. I'm fine. You'll be fine. And he was just very concerned. And he basically told her, you're going to be all right, kid. Keep your head up. And Lita then began her healing journey. Lita got really depressed during this time. She took about 4 months to heal from this neck surgery repair. She didn't really want to see people. She was adamant that she wanted to be by herself and she didn't answer phone calls. She kept her phone off for the most part. She was in the house just depressed and angry and resentful, and you could tell. She said the only reprieve she got is when Matt came home for his 2 days off. He would come home and they would spend time with each other. And then, she would get to, go with him to the gym or like chill with him for a little while. And that really perked her up. But it wasn't enough to make her, enjoy, be okay with where she was and then be excited about where she's going to end up in terms of how well she's going to move or be able to move coming into this new phase of herself. She got even more depressed because she wasn't sleeping well. The cast she was wearing around her neck was a hard cast because she had 3 fractures in her neck and the dislocated disc in her neck. It was imperative that she wore that hard cast 24/7. So it made it difficult to drive, to move, and she just became stir crazy. So instead of, staying home and continuing to wallow in her self pity, she got up and she decided to go chill with Matt Hardy and be on the road with Matt instead of staying at home. This also led WWE to believe that she was doing okay and that she could possibly move around a little bit better and maybe she could start doing some appearances, whatever WWE needed. Autographs and everything was the worst for her. She absolutely detested it because the strain on her neck at the time was brutal. So she most definitely was still in pain. And not only that, but she felt like she wasn't being productive enough. So she was bored. And she wanted to have a bit more going on than this. And she wasn't like mad that she wasn't going to get back in the ring. She was pissed that she couldn't do anything and she resented that everybody else could move and shake however they wanted. And she was restricted and confined to this goddamn neck brace. So those 4 months go by, and Lita is still angry, upset, resentful, still doing what WWE asked her, but she didn't want to do those things either. The only thing she wanted to do was wrestle. So instead of doing all the normal everyday stuff, Lita decided to do something completely different. She went to a local animal shelter that was right down the street from her house and asked if she could volunteer. Lady at the desk said, sure, go ahead. But instead of her just going and, playing with the dogs or looking at the animals, Lita did the grit. She did the hard work, the shoveling shit out of the cages. She was making sure that they, knew that they were cleaning up the animals, washing the animals, cleaning out their cages, making sure that the animals were fed. Like Lita was doing everything that the employees were doing, and they were very impressed. Nobody was concerned about her being Lita. And I think that was the thing that she loved the most, that she could just be Amy at the time. Now, the shelter ended up being in danger of closing due to the lack of funding. So she decided to host a charity autograph and meet and greet, and they did. And they had a massive turnout. They raised $5,000. They got five pets adopted. It was a big success, and this allowed the shelter to stay open under limited hours for a little bit longer, which really worked out in in her favor. It was very, very good. Now, Lita loves animals, and this led to her creating her own foundation and charity to support, animals and shelters and that kind of thing. And she said that if she ever stopped wrestling or if she ever decided to retire, that she would do something with animals. So she has her foundation and she has been working with animals ever since she retired. So Lita was able to recover from her injury. It took her a while. We're talking some months to recover from this injury. She was out for about 4 months. She was able to move. She still had to wear the cast on some occasions. She was able to take it off eventually, but she ended up doing commentary on Heat for about 7 months, she said. And in her commentary, she said some things that some people didn't like that rubbed her the wrong way in the commentary and, of course, the WWE magazine. And some of the writers didn't like it, so they purposely put her in storylines that would make her be humiliated or subject to um intentional insubordination, like basically you're an insubordinate, we need to take you down a peg type of situation. So she ended up getting into it with Eric Bischoff in this particular story. And Raw had lost a lot of ratings. Like a lot of people weren't watching Raw anymore. SmackDown was becoming the superior show. And so Bischoff, came and was like, what do you know? You've been gone for 6 months. You went to Hollywood, broke your freaking neck. You don't know anything. It was he had to be brutal because he was a heel general manager. And she was like, well, I know that it has nothing to do with the wrestlers. And maybe if you treat the wrestlers with a little bit of respect, you wouldn't have to um, worry about your ratings going down. And they were probably like, ooh. And that's when Rosie and them came out because they were Bischoff's henchmen at the time. And then Booker T and them came out, and that turned into a tag match for Sunday Night Heat. Lita did like doing commentary. She enjoyed it very much. She said that commentary was fun. But she really wanted to wrestle. She didn't want to talk about it. She wanted to be about it. You know what I'm saying? Anywhoosies. Ultimately, they decided they had to find a way to pull her from TV so that they could do an angle where when she finally returned, it really was a big pop. It really meant something. So Bischoff was known for firing people. He had just fired Stone Cold Steve Austin. He had fired somebody else. He had been known for firing people. And so they just like, let's, have Lita get fired as well. That way we will be able to move into a direction with this particular story and we'll salvage Lita and we'll have Lita, wrestle him. I mean, come back and wrestle when she's ready and when we have the story prepared for her. So she ended up coming to Raw in Atlanta, which is her hometown. And she got there and they had this sexual harassment angle, which they did often with the men in power. Vince did it. Bischoff did it all a couple of times. Vicky Guerrero did it. It wasn't sexual harassment on her part. She was low key master manipulated and was sleeping with Edge. And then the storyline was her sleeping with Dolph Ziggler. And then the storyline was her sleeping with Big Show. Damn, Vicky was a ho ho. Okay. Anyway, so I mean, I guess you could say it's sexual harassment. It is an abuse of power. Um, so she was out there and he was supposed to stroke her hair and make her feel extremely uncomfortable. And when she would deny his advances, he was set to fire her. And then the book goes off with her explaining how she can't wait to get back in the ring and how she really hoped that when she came back, she would tag with Matt and they could do this, Matt and Lita, this king and queen of the metaverse type of thing. You could tell she was very much in love with him at this point, and he was held in a very high regard. And she wanted her career to be very close to his, if not running parallel. She wanted to be right next to him every step of the way. And I thought that was very interesting because what a difference a few years can make. Time changes, and as time progresses, you lose interest and your love wanes. And I'd really like her to write another book where she really deep dives into what happened, because this book explains it in a way where she is infatuated with him. He meant the world to her. And as we get the pieces of their love story later on down the line, it seems like that all fractured as time went on and Edge was able to move in and swoop in. I'm very curious as to how that happened with her being so in love with him. Like, what changed is my point. With all that being said, though, well, what can I say about this book to close this out? The book itself isn't a bad book. I think that the book itself is really good. What I didn't like was the over explaining of matches in this book. I wasn't a big fan of that. And I didn't like the fact that it was so short, but then again, it was written so early in her career. This didn't even cover the extent of her feud with Trish Stratus. It didn't cover the extent of her feud with other superstars, like her time as Edge's valet and her time as champion with Edge. Like, that's what I thought we were going to get with this. I don't know why I thought that way. I didn't even look at when this book was written. So, shows you how well I did my research. So, eggs on me, babes. That was my fault. But like, I was very taken aback. I'm like, so we're not going to talk about, you going out there and being champ, and winning your very first title. Like, that never came up in conversation. And I was just like, you write a book and this is what we talk about? Like, I didn't know that she had got injured. Again, when I was watching wrestling, I wasn't that deep into the wrestling world or into the kayfabe and lore of everything. I honestly and legitimately just watched it for the stories, and I would leave it at that. I wasn't in to this any other way than what we had it, than how we had it. That was it. How it was presented was how I accepted it. I didn't go any further than that because I didn't need to, in my opinion. Um, and I was a teenager during this time. I was a teen, just watching the show, wasn't trying to get anything else out of it. And I saw it for what it was and accepted it for what it was. I didn't think that it was real. I thought that it was a good storyline and we were watching a good story play out on TV. And that's the way I left it. I didn't overanalyze or do anything strange. I just enjoyed what I saw and left it at that. So, overall, I think the book was cute. I think it's very, very short, relatively short. Um, but I'm hoping, and I know Becky's going to give us a lot in the next one, but I really wanted her to go into the depths of this particular, her story arc in terms of how they set up her and Trisha's stuff and their rivalry, which you got the beginnings of their rivalry and like everything that they were doing. But one thing that I really did like was how she explained how backstage was. She didn't explain it in terms of, she did tell you, like, hey, some locker rooms, you're going to have people shitting in your bags. You're going to have a lot of jealousy. You're going to have some bullshit going on. Like, that's going to happen. But she also made sure to tell you that there were some good people back there. And she made sure to explain this so that you could understand where she was coming from. And you can tell she had a lot of respect for a lot of people, Stone Cold Steve Austin being one of them. Like, he acted like a big brother, uncle type of person to her. And that's how he treated her. That's how she felt, and she really respected him and regarded him heavy. and she went to him for a lot of things. Deborah as well. She was very good friends with Tori. She was just, it seemed like she had found her tribe and created her family, so much so that she would not do anything without the advice or help of her comrades and fellow co-workers and the WWE. She was very comfortable in the WWE, felt very safe there, and that warmed my heart because from what you hear from a lot of other people is that the WWE is like, it's a monstrous machine that just churns you up, chews you up, and spits you out. And to hear that she was protected, regarded, and she felt safe in this area, it really, really warmed my heart. So I was okay and happy with that. I was also happy with some of the explanation of some of their matches, not to the extent of what we got, but more specifically on how they got to the matches. Like how some matches, they had to kind of wing it. How she had to wing it a lot. She didn't really learn anything because she wasn't physically being taught. She had to learn on the fly. So it really explained a lot of things, especially when it came to how well matches were seen and received because some people just didn't know how to do and others did. It was Wild Wild West back then, it seems. And they didn't really take the time to set up a training facility to train. They just assumed that you would know or you would learn it as you go. And I'm glad that those things have changed now because now we are allowed to be able to watch this talent be sculptured and completely created from the ground up. They are shaped and molded to what the WWE needs them to be. They are safe. They are protected. They have a facility that they can go to practice and train and learn. And not only that, but now the WWE has created an entire network that will allow them to be able to float and learn from different places and go to the PC to get what they need. They are going to be beyond educated in how to perform, act, and entertain in the wrestling world. And that in itself is not only just innovation, but it is the future of this business. And I can rightfully appreciate that because it was so desperately needed. With all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed my breakdown of this Lita book. I am going to be working on Becky's book next month. We're going to start middle of the month. This is going to be after Royal Rumble. Once we kind of get Royal Rumble out the way, I'll start on the first 5 chapters of Becky's book. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Don't forget to check out the merch. The merch is always in the description. I really, really, really want y'all to check out the merch. It really does help my channel and of course me. It will help me continue to run my channel. You can always get a subscription for um a membership, I'm sorry, for my channel. They're very, very inexpensive, very cheap. This video is going to go up for the members only for now. So, there's that. But I appreciate every single one of you guys who are members and to all of my subscribers and my new potential subscribers. Thank you so much. And hello to my noobs. How are you guys doing? I hope you guys enjoyed the content over here because I'm going to be rolling it out as much as possible. I love you guys. I appreciate you. And please follow me on my socials, okay? And make sure that you check out my fourth wall merch. It's important, loves, okay? My fourth wall merch is nice. I designed it myself. It's very cute. You've got Citizen on the sleeve, Taurus on one sleeve. You can, get the original artwork, which is my favorite, with the yellow United States of Tiffany comic book strip, or you can get the second artwork with the, I think it's the bluish United States of Tiffany strip, and it is a look of full on chaos, which I have a tendency to cause. So it is a purge scene, and I'm in the center, and you can see me cloaked, basically giving my okay to the chaos that we're seeing on the screen, which makes me feel great. I feel right, Brian. I feel right. Anyways, again, check out the merch. Please go to Fourth Wall. It's good quality merch. I picked name brand hoodies and t-shirts so that the quality would be great. I didn't want to give you guys anything super, super cheap. I do have a cheaper hoodie up on the website. in case you didn't want the Adidas hoodie. But it is there. Okay. And we also have t shirts and cups and mugs as well. All right. I'll see you guys in my next one. The next book is going to be Beckala's book. We're going to be talking about Rebecca Quinn, aka Becky Lynch, and her book. And her book is much longer. So we're going to be on this book for a while. See you then.